I want to talk about seamless textures, tileable and non-tileable textures. Here I have two examples. A texture that I can easily repeat or offset without showing that it's repeating itself or it's sliding. On the other hand, I have a non-tileable texture here, and I'm going to show you in comparison. For tileable textures, we use what is called seamless textures or seamless images, which means that the beginning and the end are continuing. So let me show you what that means. If I go here to the place 2D texture, and if I go into the offset, let me teach you a pro tip here. In order for you to move the numbers, instead of punching specific numbers, in order for you to move them like a slider, you click and hold Control, and then with the left mouse button you drag. Okay, so now notice how it's sliding offset, and it's not really showing that. It's kind of strange. I can also even go here and switch it on both the X and Y without showing any weird results. I suppose to doing the same here. Oops, see? And oops, see? The other thing that I can do also is to go here and repeat. Let's say I want to repeat it 5 times. Although it is not perfect, you can see here some issues with some of the values in those brick seams where the repetition becomes kind of evident, but it's still good, especially if you have the camera really close. But you cannot do this on this type of texture because it's gonna look horrible right away. So let me repeat it 5 times. It's pretty evident. So how do we turn a texture like this into seamless? I have this image here, and I'm gonna click and hold Alt in order for me to duplicate it. So instead of having this result, I want to duplicate this image. Click and hold Alt, and then move with the left mouse button, and now you can see that they're kind of continuous. On the other hand, here I'm going to unlock. You can easily see that if I do the same, it's kind of hard to see, but maybe on the top, but here it's pretty evident. So my goal is to make this to be effectively seamless, just like this. So how do I do that? The first thing is to have a precise resolution. So Control Alt I, that's going to take me into the resolution of the image. If you have had this on percent or any other thing, just make sure you put it on pixels. Now I'm gonna increase the resolution just for ease of calculation, or maybe I can make it 600, because if you put it on 1000 it becomes pretty blurry or bad, so there's no point of increasing it beyond that. So 600 would be fine. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is to go into Filter, Other, and then Offset, and the offset has to be half the resolution, and that's going to be 300 on both horizontal and vertical. Now all I need to focus on is to make the inside good, but without touching the borders at all, because the borders now are pretty continuous, meaning if I click and hold Alt and do the same trick that I've done before, you will notice that they're actually seamless, meaning that they're continuous. Okay, so the tools that I use, I'm going to introduce some of them on here. As I mentioned on that example when I was displaying them in 3D, some of those seams were kind of brighter than they should have been. So I could either make these seams to be darker, or I can make these ones to be brighter. Really, it depends on the scene. So I'm going to demonstrate both. I'm going to hit O on the keyboard, shortcut for this menu here. And if you want to toggle between dodge and burn, the sponge is different. The sponge is going to take the saturation, it's going to suck up the saturation of certain colors. You can see here it's really taking away that saturation. Okay, so what you want to focus on is either the dodge, which is going to make things brighter, or you want to hit and hold shift and then O, and that's going to toggle the modes, and the burn is going to make those seams to be darker. And of course, for what it's worth, if I hit shift and toggle O to go into the dodge, make sure you, in some cases like this, you utilize the shift. So you click and hold the left mouse and then you click and hold shift, and now when you move the mouse, it's actually locking on the horizon. You can also lock it on the vertical by doing the same thing. So left mouse button, shift, and then down. Also keep in mind that you can change the amount or the strength of the dodge or the burn. So definitely in this case I wouldn't go all the way to 100, because otherwise it would look like this, right? Almost like bleaching those seams. Okay, so those were the dodge and the burn. Now in this case here I want to demonstrate two tools, and because this is a pretty challenging texture to turn into a seamless texture, because it's kind of abstracty and by design it's like this, so it may easily lose its identity. So let me demonstrate here first, and then I'll go and work on that texture. So in this texture here, for instance, let's say for instance I want to eliminate this kind of texture here. If I click and hold, well, without holding, if I click S, and if I go maybe somewhere here, Alt, and then click left mouse button, now I can go here and I can easily just clone. Here's one of the bad practices. Cloning without a reference or registration, it's pretty risky. So in a case like this, what I would do is actually I would go and start the cloning from here, from the corner, because when you clone, it's continuous. Notice how the upper side, you can still see exactly where the cursor is going. Outside the mouse cloning spot, notice how exactly where that source here, how it's moving. So click and keep noticing here, okay? See? It's showing you exactly where it's cloning from. So in a case like this, where I wanna copy these visuals into this area, the smart way to do it is to go to the corner, clone, and then go here, and now you can see that I can specifically start it exactly when it's perfectly aligned, right? So as you can see here, this is not really a good spot, mainly because of this, but the same practice applies. So in other words, I'm gonna go with something different than this one, because this is pretty thick here, so it is kind of strange, and it might cause an issue actually in the repetition. So I'm gonna go, let's say I want to copy these here. So go here, Alt, and then click with the left mouse button, and then I'm gonna go here, align those, and then clone. See? And I'm gonna use the dodge tool to just brighten this. I'm gonna hit 1 on the keyboard, which is the shortcut to go and click here to set it to 10%. Why would I do that if I can just click one number on the keyboard and it would do it for me? So 1 would be 10%, 2 would be 20%. So now this way here I can try out, click left mouse button, then shift, and then move the mouse. It's a gentle bleaching if you must. I'm gonna do the same here. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna do here similar techniques, but mainly with the stamp or cloning tool, and also the J shortcut, which is the healing tool. The healing tool is going to help you on, let's say for instance, a spot like this here. This is bad. I can easily just go to the stamp and say clone from here, and I can reduce the brush. By the way, with a clone, always make sure it's 100% up, because you do not want to have blurriness. So now with the stamp tool kind of at a decent size here, click and hold Alt, and instead of copying from here, any repetition is going to be very evident. So I can go here, for instance, maybe copy from here. So copy something almost on the border, like this, and go here. And this is going to be a different treatment now, probably like with the dodge tool, or maybe I would restart the procedure, but maybe using a different source, because as you can see it's kind of messy here. But this is actually a perfect presentation for the healing tool. If you go to the healing tool and hit J, the first tool is almost like a brush, which is perfect. So I'm gonna reduce the brush size. So with a case like this, the brush is exactly what you need. You click with the left mouse button and then it's gone. It's like content aware. It's gonna be filling the information here based on the pixel information and colors around it. So now I can drag and heal this. Now the issue with the healing tool is that, let's say for instance you have something like here, and let's say for instance you want to fix this. If you do this, it's just gonna get really messy and smudgy, right? And it loses the texture. That's the biggest problem. So if you don't want to lose the texture, more like stamping the healing tool, then you go to the patch tool and you say, okay, you see this area here? I want to make it something like this, or maybe this. And notice how it copies the texture, however it maintains the color values, or it sort of mixes them in between. And this is magical. It's like amazing. It's wizardry. So now we can fix anything. Like here, stamping with clone might not be ideal, but I can simply just select this whole seam here and say I want it to be as clean as this, right? And in many cases you have to be gentle and kind of conservative with these tools. You go just step by step, more like passes, right? Passes of experiments. And then in some cases, after I do this patch, I click and hold J, and then Shift, and then J, 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 till I go back to the brush. Now I can just do this. Yeah, but I mean these would still need fixing, but you got the point. So I'm gonna do the same thing here, but this is a much more challenging situation because it is by design an abstract kind of texture, and it would have to be kind of weird. So no matter what we do, it's still gonna repeat in an evident way, but the goal is to make it less evident and more repeatable. So let's see what I can do here. The main goal for me is to just, as I mentioned before, is to just focus on these areas here, especially that cross that I get in the center upon offsetting the image, and then the borders are not to be touched. Okay, so stamp, Alt, and then I need to define if I want to go with this, or maybe a mix. So I'm just gonna go with, you know, gentle kind of mix between them, something like this, but closer to the white area here. So yeah, S, Alt, click, and you can also utilize the healing patch tool, because it copies full texture. So if I want to take this and make it like this, what's happening here is it's trying to drag the pixels from here, so it's kind of it's leveling things out. That's why the healing is not necessarily perfect for this. That's why the stamp is better for a case like this. And as I mentioned before, you want to make sure that the hardness is all the way up, so it would be pretty harsh. So you can copy from certain areas, and then after you clone them, you get to do some healing. And remember that the source where you start the cloning, like I'm gonna go here and drag, notice how that mouse is exactly on that source area. So you want to be careful not to make it go into like bad spots. Let's say something like this, where repeating it would be too evident. So keep an eye on where the source of that stamping is going. So this here is kind of pretty evident if I repeat it. So I'm gonna kill this spot and make it more like neutralized, if you must. I could also try the effect of selecting certain areas. I'm going to be using the lasso tool, shortcut L, like this. And I can rely on Photoshop on doing some magic. Shift F5 is going to fill with content aware and hit OK. So that could be another tool that could help you as well. So let me try same thing here. If I'm kind of like confused or in doubt, I can try different things, right? So Shift F5 and OK. Sometimes the result is not great, sometimes it is good. So yeah, let's just call this kind of OK. Let me try a few things here. Maybe I'll copy the texture from there. So let's say, for instance, this is good. If I hit Control I, it's just kind of interesting to invert it. Who knows, maybe it would give me a different texture that I could also use. So I'm going to now click and hold Alt and drag this just to make sure that it's good. Yeah, it seems okay. I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm just checking that I didn't mess up with the borders. So now this seems to be good. I'm gonna save it as a separate file. Okay, so this is supposed to be the seamless one. Let's put it to the test. Go here, place 2D texture, go to the offset, amazing, isn't it? And then repeat 5. So you can see here it's pretty evident, because by design this texture is supposed to be unique. So if you repeat it, it would be like pretty crazy, like if it doesn't show that it's actually repeating. But what really matters is that you're supposed to be kind of really close to it in a way. This is the kind of texture where it's pretty unique. So of course, it's like having 500 messes next to each other. It's definitely gonna seem kind of matrixy, right? But yeah, getting really close, you can pan all you want, it's gonna look as good as it gets. And the same thing applies on the brick as well. It's evident here that it's repeated, but if you zoom in, you pan all you want, it's gonna look fantastic. So that is my video on tileable and non-tileable texture, and also how to create a seamless texture like this out of a non-tileable texture using Photoshop. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video.